Vamos para a última pergunta. São duas parecidas, eu vou ler as duas. Existe alguma diferença entre o sistema legal que você acabou de descrever e o proposto por Murray Rothbard? E como conciliar a defesa ética libertária da não iniciação da agressão com a defesa utilitária da livre competição de lawmaking?
Yes. I am not an expert on Murray Rothbard, but my understanding of the fundamental difference between our views of anarchy is that he imagined that legal philosophers would work out the correct legal code and everybody would agree to it, whereas I imagine that you will have a polylegal system with courts in effect competing to produce legal codes that customers want to live under. So that from my standpoint, he's making a mistake similar to the mistake of people who think if only we told the government how to build cars, they'd build good cars. Of course, he didn't want a government. He was an anarchist too. But in the sense that he's imagining that people get the right rules because they're good people, whereas I'm imagining that people get the right rules for the same reason that restaurants make good food, because it's in their rational self-interest to do it. So in that sense, it's a different model. Now, I may be being unfair. I never actually argued these issues with Murray, although I knew him slightly. But as far as I can tell, at least, his view was that you were to deduce the just libertarian code. Beyond that, on the general question of different bases for libertarianism, my view is that I have no good way of showing that my moral beliefs are right. I do have pretty good arguments for my economic beliefs. Furthermore, I believe that if my economic beliefs are right, I don't have to convince people of my moral beliefs. Because although people's moral beliefs differ, they don't differ that much. There are very few people who will say, what I want is a world where people are hungry and ignorant. So if I'm right that the institutions that I want would produce not only a world that libertarians would like better, but a world that most socialists would like better too, then I don't have to persuade the socialists that their principles are wrong. All I have to do is persuade them that their economics are wrong. And since I have better economic arguments than moral arguments, I'd rather try to do that. So I really see it partly as going back to my point that law is complicated. I think the moral arguments are not as simple as many libertarians think. Furthermore, even if the argument from one point to another is simple, I do not think any of us have really good arguments for showing that our starting point is right. That when I originally read Ayn Rand, what intrigued me was that she thought she had solved Hume's is-ought problem. She thought she could derive oughts from the facts of reality. I concluded that she didn't, that she was mistaken. I don't think anyone else has done it either. And therefore, I would rather not try to base my arguments for libertarianism on the idea that it's morally right, but rather on the idea that it produces the kind of results that most people would like.
Fantástico, David. Muito obrigado.
One final point. As many of you realize, although I was happy to speak at an Austrian conference, I am not an Austrian economist. I'm an American economist. I think the emphasis on schools of economic thought on the whole is overdone. There is good economics, some of which is done by people who think they're Austrians and some people who think they aren't, and there's bad economics, ditto. But I did want to make my contribution to the Mises Institute of Brazil by giving them a copy of my book, Hidden Order, which describes my view of economics. And you can all read it and tell me why it's wrong.
Thank you, David.